I may be making a dedicated Doflamingo video, but I'm wearing my Lost sweatshirt just to make extremely clear where my allegiances lie. Doflamingo is probably one of the most nuanced and interesting villains we've gotten in the series so far. I just finished reading Dressrosa for context of where I am in the series, so if he shows up again past Dressrosa, it won't be discussed here because I haven't read it yet. But I just finished Dressrosa, and Doflamingo is a character that I hate and despise so strongly, and that, man, he's really, really well written. Oda's extremely good at writing his villains just in general. He has this ability to create a character that is such an isolated part of the story, yet that has such extreme impact that I'm still thinking of them so long later. There are definitely villains that show up as one-offs, at least as far as I've gotten so far. They haven't come back around. I'm sure they all will. There are villains that have shown up as one-offs that I don't care about and that I don't care to see again. Or characters that when they did show up again, I didn't want them there and I was fine when they were eliminated. But there are also villains that he's created that are so impactful and so full of personality that I get so excited every time they show back up on the page, and I'm just holding my breath until they'll come back around again. Doflamingo is a character that from my not very first introduction, he showed up pretty early on in the series, but the first time I really got to know him, I instantly hated him on a physical level. Like I could feel it in my bones how much I hated this man. When he cut off the leg of Oars and then walked away celebrating. When he had that really good monologue at Marine Ford that was just ate away at my mind because it was so impactful. But I hate him so much and I don't want him to stay in my mind. Then when he was the main antagonist of Dressrosa, I was excited to get to know him a little bit more, but I was mostly just excited to see Luffy beat him up. Oda, one of his other extremely amazing skills that he has in this series is his ability to take a villain and make them as nuanced as he makes any other character. Even the worst of the worst characters that we meet, people that have personally deeply harmed my own crew members, Oda doesn't leave them at them being bad people or bad fishmen. He continues arc after arc after arc to just continue to add layers to this world that adds layers to the characters that just blows me away. I expected no less from Doflamingo, and I got far more. And so anyway, Doflamingo is a character that I decided to create his own video. One, because Dressrosa was so long, and in discussing it, something had to go. So just eliminating all the Doflamingo talk and putting it all in one isolated space was exactly what I wanted to do because he's such an interesting character study. I wanted to dig into him a little bit more. Being not caught up with the series, I don't watch One Piece content, so if other people have already made this video, I'm so sorry. So Doflamingo, raised a celestial dragon, was raised as a virtual god. He was born into wealth, into privilege, and into this idea that he is simply above everyone else because of his blood. This is his core belief about who he is that he's been told about himself since he was a baby. His dad, in an act of humility and of regret, he sees the world honestly as it is and pulls away from this life that he had chosen and participated in, but that he's realized is so wrong. So he pulls himself and his family away from that, and in doing that, everything that Doflamingo was raised to believe is inherently his and is owed to him is stripped of him in just a moment. Not only that, but they were wholly rejected by the people that they landed on their island. The amount of harm that the celestial dragons cause to the world and to the people in it has naturally created a level of anger in your average man that is understandable and extremely intense. Unfortunately, that causes Doflamingo's family to suffer. Mingo and his family were strung up, humiliated, and physically harmed to the point that it's implied that Doflamingo lost his eye during this torture that they encountered. Then from there, they starved, they suffered, and his mom died as a result of all that they went through. It's so interesting because while I despise the Celestial Toe Jams so much because they are truly evil people, at the same time, I get where Doflamingo is coming from. He was raised a god, and that was stripped of him by his father. Then this god, in a flash, lost everything by no choice of his own. I can't really blame him for hating his dad, for stripping him of everything that he's owed, and for hating humanity, for not just turning on him, but torturing him. I also don't blame him for doing everything in his power to fight back, to get back to where he believes that he belongs. Doesn't mean I agree with it. I of course don't. But I see how this broken kid who has no agency of his own, who has made zero choices for his own life, that everybody is making choices for him. I can't blame him for despising his father and then for killing him and bringing his head to the Celestial Dragons to get back in their good graces. Then they reject him too? I mean, you wonder about this villain's origin, and then you get it, and you're like, well, yeah, that'd make a villain out of you, you'd think. These defining moments, these life experience for these children really shaped who they both were. For Corazon, it opened his eyes to how broken this world is and the forces that are causing it to be so broken, and at a very young age made a choice to fight back against it. With Doflamingo, his response was to do anything he could to get back to where he felt like he belonged, and when he couldn't, to respond by wanting to just burn it all down. Enter Trebol. Trebol, who in my opinion is just as evil as anybody else that we're discussing here. After seeing how scrappy and how much of a fighter Doflamingo is, after seeing how he views himself and the world, and seeing how powerful he is, of course, Trebol decides to take him in. And I mentioned in one of my Dressrosa videos that I wanted to talk about Baby 5 in this video too, and the reason is because I think that Baby 5 is such a great parallel to Doflamingo in this context. You know, Baby 5 is someone who was rejected and unloved and unwanted by her family and by everyone around her, and so she's just desperately trying to be needed. Doflamingo is someone who was raised to believe that he's greater than everyone, that he's better than everyone simply because of his blood, but has been rejected by everyone, and all of his choices for his own life have been stolen from him. Trebol sees the ability of these people, and he sees the flaws in them and the pain in them, and he chooses to exploit them by propping Doflamingo up and telling him that he deserves to be king, that he's right about himself, that he is owed all these things, and that they will take it together by force. He raises him to coddle these terrible mentalities and to prop that up so that he can manipulate and use him too. There's this line in Dressrosa where Baby 5 is about to kill herself, and she says, as long as it'll make me needed. And she says, but I was just trying to help you. And the response she gets is, and I guess you've been living in a place where no one forced you to stop doing that. And to me, that line is so impactful because it just wraps up so much of how harmful Trebol has truly been, that he takes these people who are powerful and that have potential to be used, he manipulates and controls them to exploit their weaknesses so that they'll be dependent on him so that he can benefit for what they can do for him. He's happy to be a background character. He's happy to just be a supporting role, but in the end, he's the one pulling the strings. We're gonna come back to that, but first I wanna briefly touch on the effects of Doflamingo, who's had these mentalities that were ingrained in him by the Celestial Dragons and then were propped up and encouraged by Trebol. How much damage this truly evil man was able to cause. Between owning the slave house, the auction house on the Knot Island, to being an arms dealer to all the biggest crooks in the world, enslaving the dwarfs so they'll make smiles, enslaving the residents of Dressrosa, forcing them to be forgotten and to live out their lives as toys. And if they don't live out their lives as toys and try to convince someone that they've been forgotten, then they're just disposed of. Manipulating the government and the Celestial Dragons and CP0 and just so many different forces, manipulating them into giving him what he wants, stealing the kingdom from the king, promising the king that he will sell it back to him if the king can get enough money, and then forcing the king to run through the kingdom begging the residents to give them money, only then to control him and force him to slaughter his people, ruining his name, throwing everybody, after he becomes the king, throwing everybody, well, I already talked about the dwarfs and the people, I'm out of order now, throwing everybody that tries to not obey his laws into jail until they can fight their way out of jail by winning enough tournaments, which we all know could never happen. Slaughtering as many of the royal family as he could after he took over the kingdom, therefore killing Scarlet, taking Violet as a prisoner, essentially, whenever she begs to serve him instead of dying. I mean, truly, this man is so evil in his ways. There's so many things that he does that just, when you list off all of the things that he has done to harm people in his way, it's genuinely like, how can you not despise this man? But at the same time, in knowing where this man comes from and in how he got here, he really stops looking like this big evil force and more like this kid that's just thrashing against the bars of his own cage. It really is amazing how much of his powers seem to come from his childhood. Stuff like some of his moves that he's created that he uses are named after stuff that people were screaming at him when he was being strung up. He himself was strung up, and now he acts as a puppeteer, controlling people, forcing them to destroy their own lives and to harm people they love. He lost all agency over his life when his dad defected from the Celestial Dragons, couldn't get his way back in, and so now he's trying to manufacture the ability that he feels he deserves, the power that he believes that he deserves, either through by making himself important and needed by by a lot of the villains of the world through this weapons dealing, or by forcing people to obey him by being a manipulator, a liar, a thief, and a puppet master. He believes that he deserves all the power in the world and all the respect in the world, and since he can't have it in the way he believes he deserves it, he will manufacture it and he will force it from people. It seems like around every corner of his life, he hasn't had much of a choice between his dad defecting and the toe jams. I mean, the Celestial Dragons not taking him back in, and then now Trebol is manipulating him, though I don't think he sees that. Even down to when everything's not going his way, he creates this game, this kill or be killed game, but we all know that he never actually planned to fulfill any of those promises. He was gonna kill them all anyway because it wasn't going as planned. People were rebelling. People were realizing that he was lying and stealing this title that he has. And his response is just to kill everyone and start over and try again with a new kingdom. You know, it really does feel like he himself is just thrashing against the bars of a cage. He himself is completely trapped, unable to be the author of his own story. And so he's doing everything he can to force the narrative in his direction. And so when he puts the cage over everybody and he cinches it in and cinches it in and cinches it in until it'll strangle them, until it'll kill them, it really does feel like a reflection of how he feels about his own life. Like he cannot have any kind of agency over his own life, and the cage just keeps getting cinched in more and more every time he tries to manufacture his own destiny, his own godship, his own power. Things keep going wrong and it keeps being taken from him. And so much of his abilities, so much of his powers and the way in which he chooses to use those powers are reflective of that. I have this headcanon. I know that a lot of the One Piece villains, their devil fruits and their personalities really go hand in hand. I don't know at what point Doflamingo got his devil fruit abilities. If it's in the story and I missed it, I'm sorry. But I didn't notice the point in history that we got his devil fruit abilities. I know that with a lot of the villains in One Piece, the villains tend to, you know, their devil fruit and their personality tend to go together. They complement each other. I like to think that a lot of it is just somebody is evil and they're trying to do evil things. They have an ability and then their personality kind of just melds with that ability, because in order to be efficient with a devil fruit, you have to be creative. You have to think of ways to make it work for you. And so your personality just kind of like melds in with that, and the type of evil deeds you do are naturally going to work with the abilities that you have. But my headcanon is that it was the opposite with Doflamingo, because of this moment in his life where he and his family were lynched, because that's clearly such a defining moment for him. I like to think that when he had Trebol on his side and Trebol was propping him up and doing everything that Doflamingo could ever ask, any whim that he could have, Trebol accomplished it. I like to think that Doflamingo, as intentional of a guy that he is, and as he's trying to get revenge on the world, and as he's trying to fight back against the world not giving him what he deserves, that he studied devil fruits and found the string fruit, I think is what it's called, and told Trebol, that's the one I want. Because of when he was strung up, he wants that so that he can be a puppeteer and he can string up everybody else to force them to obey him. To me, it makes sense that people's personalities and people's fighting styles and people's choices that they make and how they use their devil fruits, that their personality would meld into the fruit, because I don't know, that feels natural to me. But with Doflamingo, I like to think that he found the one he wanted because of this defining moment in his life, and he sought that out and chose it so that he could do the same to others. We know how ruthless this man is, that he will do absolutely anything to accomplish his goals, to be respected, to be bowed down to, because it's in his blood and he deserves it. I find it so fascinating, though, that even in the depths of this evil and even in the intensity of the acts that he's willing to do, that he isn't just wholly that. You know, there is a side of him that is so fascinating to him, that he truly values the people that he's with. You have characters that will happily leave their comrades to die. You have villains who will happily leave their comrades to die if it means that they get out okay. But then you have Doflamingo, possibly the most evil character we've met yet, who genuinely, wholly cares about his family. When he took in law, he was reading a book on where law comes from, truly investing himself in law's history and in understanding him. And then from there, you also have Law and the other kids that were trained with Law. You see them training them up and protecting them and truly caring for them. When Trebol messes up, and he's begging for forgiveness, essentially, and Doflamingo just says, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. And he moves on. He doesn't hold his comrades' failings against them. He cares about them. He truly cares, to the point that when they fail him, he brushes it off and moves forward as a family. If you laugh at Pika, he'll kill you. If you lay a finger on Corazon, he'll kill you. He'll defend them to his greatest extent, but at the same time, if they turn on him, he doesn't hesitate to kill them too. And it's so interesting because he clearly doesn't want to. He clearly genuinely loves and cares for his family, not as subjects, not as faceless soldiers or as means to an end. He doesn't view Sugar as just the girl who can turn people into toys. He genuinely cares for his family and takes care of them. But if they don't serve him, if they don't love him back, if they betray him, he doesn't hesitate to kill them or even to know their weaknesses and use those weaknesses against them. But it hurts him. Being betrayed by his family, by the only people in the world that he feels that he can trust, kills him. Doflamingo is such a fascinating character study to me because he's so wicked, and the ways in which he harms the world are so devastating. And yet, Trebol is the one pulling the strings on Doflamingo, forcing him to do his own bidding so that Trebol could benefit. Even when Doflamingo is using his string abilities to force the world to obey him, he's still being manipulated. He's still not the author of his own story. It's such a tragic character story. We even get, at one point he tells us what the thing that he hates most, that he doesn't care about being a pirate, that he doesn't care about any of these things. And he says the thing that he hates the most is people looking down on him, that even the idea that the Straw Hats and crew could possibly think that they could beat him is enough to make him sick. He has spent his life being manipulated and lied to and treated as a tool. I look at Doflamingo now and I see a kid that's still strung up on the wall, still crying out, still with absolutely no power. I may understand him, but that doesn't make anything he's done better. It just makes him one of the most compelling villains that I've read, because I see where he's come from and it's so tragic, and I see him now and it's so tragic, and I get how he could have become this. But then I also love that we have that direct contrast of Corazon, who went through all the same stuff and became something so much better. And it's just, Doflamingo is truly, his story, his life is truly a tragedy. And I love that this evil character that has caused so much harm and pain is so nuanced. Anyway, I just wanted to do a video for him because I just think that he's an incredibly written villain, and I just wanted to chat about him a little bit. So I'd love to chat with you more about it in the comments. What are some other things that you would like to add that I didn't hit on in this video in particular? Next week I will have Zoa? I don't remember how to pronounce it, but I will look it up. I'll have that arc review up next week. I hope you enjoyed this video. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you again soon. Bye.